Carlos Sainz, oh yeah. Smooth operator, Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz. I want to be like Carlos. Oh my god, that race was so good. Carlos Sainz proved he's the protagonist when he used the power of friendship to win the Singapore Grand Prix. The Singapore Grand Prix was definitely the best race of 2023 so far, and it showed just how close and exciting the racing can be when you remove Red Bull from the equation. And by removed from the equation, I mean not on the podium, because that's about the closest we can get given the dominance of the RB19. There are teams that would kill to place 5th and 8th, but for Red Bull, that's the worst they've done all season. Nobody seems to understand why Red Bull's car was so squirrely this weekend, but I have a hunch that it has something to do with what it did the last time it was in Singapore. Speaking of rusty trombones, I spent the last 10 laps of this race jerking off George Russell, talking about how he's been putting Hamilton to shame, saying things like, he's not the future, he's the now. And then good old Jorpedo goes and does his best Dale Earnhardt impression and shows us why Lewis is still the top dog at Mercedes. They say it's quite hard to pass in Singapore, to which Lewis Hamilton replied, actually it's quite easy to gain positions in Singapore, just not on track. But Lewis wasn't the only guy in a dick measuring contest this race day. Carlos Sainz walked all over Ferrari's golden boy, strutted straight from pole to victory, stopping along the way to help out his former teammate and current rival Lando Norris by giving him DRS so he would have enough pace in hand to fight off the charging Mercedes for both of them, giving them both a better finish than if they hadn't cooperated. When the race engineer came on the radio to tell him that
Lando 0.8 behind, 0.8 with DRS,
Carlos responded with,
yeah, it's on purpose.
We got to witness Carlos Sainz warp digivolve into his ultimate form. If you listen to that radio message closely, you can actually hear the exact moment his erection bursts through his race suit and starts flicking the brake balance switch for him. But our boy Carlos had some competition for girthiest erection this weekend. I can't imagine a feeling more arousing than being released on fresh tires, in clean air, and to be closing the gap to the race leader by seconds per lap. But then if you're Lewis, you end up getting stuck behind your teammate who's starting to struggle, and then, on the last lap, he ends up wiping out, handing you the podium. Honestly, I was surprised Lewis didn't just roll over and fall asleep after that climax. Just kidding, I'm sure Lewis is all about the aftercare. But when Lewis was up on that podium, it looked like he was going to cry, but didn't have enough fluids in his body. And I understand, because after watching that race, I too didn't have any fluids left in my body. Fernando Alonso, on the other hand, had big, full balls energy for the entire race. After locking up on his way into the pits, earning himself a penalty, he then had a pit stop of over 20 seconds, and for the first time ever, we got to hear Nando get on the radio to complain that this car was undrivable. This is how we know Fernando is ready for another title fight. He's back to complaining on the radio, the way champions do. And on the other hand, the one with broken wrists, Aston Martin didn't field a second car in Singapore because the reserve driver needs to have participated in at least one other session of the race weekend prior to the race itself in order to participate in the race. The official messaging about Lance Stroll is that he's still recovering from his crash in qualifying, but I think that maybe, just maybe, Daddy Stroll has put him in timeout to think about what he's done. Nothing. He's done nothing, and that's the problem. Kinda like Daniel Ricciardo, or more like Daniel Ricciardo who? Fetus with a super license, Liam Lawson, knocked out literal god Max Verstappen in Q2 with an AlphaTauri, and then went on to score 40% of the team's total points for the season. Has Daniel Ricciardo scored any points this season? That's a Daniel Ricciardo no. But it wasn't all good news at AlphaTauri today. Yuki was knocked out at the start of the race yet again, this time with a puncture on lap 2. Helmut Marko commented on the situation after the race, saying, "It's such a shame because right now is precisely when Yuki needs to be getting results if he wants to keep his seat." And then added, "Nobody can prove that I've tampered with Yuki's car or tires. This is just bad luck," even though nobody suggested he had. The after-race show had some crazy new intro music,
The perfect season is no more.
which makes sense because just before the race ended, Will Buxton handed in his gun and badge.
So, in 2023, Red Bull's perfect year has been stopped.
This just in, there's a special ceremony happening in Canada as a result of this race. Let's check it out.
Well, you've heard the British guys enough, so why don't you listen to somebody else for a change?
Today, on behalf of all Canadians, we're making Logan, what the fuck is a corner sergeant, an honorary Canuck, and bestowing upon him the new title of Latifi Sergeant for his masterful summoning of a safety car to give a race an insane ending. It reminds me of the insane ending that your mom gave me for a tenner behind the 24-hour Sal's last night. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. For the poll of the week, I asked, Max starts in 11th tomorrow. How you feeling? 31% of you said, lol, Max plus RB19 will win from anywhere, while 69%, nice, of respondents said he might not actually win for once, which means 31% of people will be upset that the 10 race streak is broken, while 69% of us are just dreading the start of the next streak of unbroken race wins. I do want to say though, to everybody who thinks this race is a sign that Red Bull's dominance is coming to an end, their car has been the best car at 14 of the 15 tracks this season. Even if their car was absolute dog shit at the remaining tracks, they would still have the drivers and constructors championships comfortably in hand. It makes me laugh when I think about how, for years to come, people are going to look back on this season as if it was legendary, as if it was one of the greatest because of all the records that were set, but they won't realize that for those of us living it, it's kind of a joke. I don't care if you love Max or hate him, there is no denying this title. Frankly, this season was over before it started because of Max. Checo couldn't do what he's done in that car, and Checo is a damn solid driver. If Checo was the top driver at Red Bull, this would actually be one of the most competitive seasons since 2012. But Checo isn't the best driver at Red Bull, and anybody who bets against Max to win a race this season is stupid. I don't care that he didn't win today. I'm not ashamed to admit that I predicted a Max win because it's a safe bet, regardless of where he starts on the grid. Now, before we do the spicy joke of the week, please take a look at the meme on screen. If this bothers you, the next joke is not for you. Liberty Media once again did a kids broadcast with head of Formula One Stefano Domenicali remarking, F1 Kids is a great example of Formula One pushing the boundaries to find new and innovative ways to connect with our fans. What he neglected to mention was that the innovation is child labor, and what they're pushing was the boundaries of labor ethics.